Welcome. Before anything else begins, let yourself arrive here. There is nowhere you need to be tonight except exactly where you already are. The day is finished now, whatever it held, and you have set it down. You can feel it leaving you slowly, the way warmth leaves a room when a door is left open just a little, unhurried, without any drama at all. Let your breathing find its own pace. You do not have to deepen it or slow it or count it. Simply notice that it is happening, the way it has been happening all day without your help, faithful and quiet and complete. Each breath is doing its work whether you watch it or not. Tonight we are going to travel together to a place very far from here and very far from now. We are going to a long, narrow country of grey stone and dark water, where the mountains come straight down to the sea, and the sea cuts deep into the mountains, and the two of them have been arguing gently for 10,000 years. We are going to Norway in the year 950. It is the beginning of winter there, and winter in that place, in that year, is not the few cold weeks you might know. It is half of the world. It is a season that arrives slowly and stays for the better part of a year, that fills the valleys with snow and the days with darkness, and that asks of every person who lives through it a long, patient, repeating kind of work. We are going to live one winter inside that world. Not quickly, not as a list of facts. We are going to move through it slowly, the way the people who actually lived it moved through it. One task at a time, one quiet hour at a time, until the light comes back. You do not need to remember any of this. You do not need to follow it closely or hold on to it. The words are only here to give your mind a soft and gentle place to rest, while your body does the real work of falling asleep. If your attention drifts away from the story, that is good. That is exactly what is meant to happen. Let it drift. Let the voice become a kind of weather in the background, something you can hear without listening, and let sleep come whenever it is ready. So settle in. Let your shoulders lower themselves away from your ears. Let your hands grow heavy and still. Let the bed hold all of your weight, completely, the way the earth holds the weight of a stone without effort and without complaint. And let us begin, slowly, by walking toward a small house at the edge of a frozen fjord, as the first real snow of the year begins to fall. Take a moment, before the journey truly begins, to let your body understand that it is allowed to rest now. It has carried you all through the day. It has done everything that was asked of it, and now its work is finished, and there is nothing left for it to do but soften and grow heavy and let go. So let it begin. Let the weight of your head settle fully into the pillow. Let your jaw unclench and your brow smooth, and the small held tightness around your eyes simply release. Let your shoulders, which have a way of creeping upward through a long day, drop down and back, away from your ears, into rest. Let your arms grow heavy. Let your hands fall open. Let your back settle, and your hips, and your legs, each part in turn handing its weight over to the bed beneath you, until you are no longer holding yourself up at all, until you are simply held. There is a particular kind of relief in that, in finally setting the body down. You may feel it as a kind of sinking, a slow gentle descent, as though the bed were drawing you softly downward into itself. Let that happen. There is nothing to resist and nothing to keep hold of. The day is over. You have set it down. And as the body settles, the mind too can begin to slow. It may not want to at first. The mind has its own momentum, its own habit of turning and turning over the day's small business, and you do not need to fight it or silence it. You need only give it something quiet and slow and far away to rest upon instead. That is what this long story is for. It is a place for the mind to go and be gently occupied, a slow path for it to walk, while the deeper work of sleep gathers beneath. So we are going to that far country, that long narrow land of mountains and dark water, in the deep of a winter 1,000 years gone. And we are going to take it slowly, very slowly, because there is no hurry anywhere in this night. The story does not need to be followed, it does not need to be remembered. It is only weather, soft weather, a voice and a warmth in the background of your rest, and you may drift away from it whenever you like, and sink down past it into sleep, and that will be exactly right. For now, simply breathe, and settle, and let the first images come. A grey sky, a still fjord, a low green house with smoke rising from it, and the first slow flakes of a winter's snow beginning gently to fall. Imagine, then, that you're standing on a low hill above the water in the last grey light of an afternoon in late October. The fjord below you is long and still. It is a finger of the sea pushed far inland between two walls of mountain, and its surface has the dull, heavy shine of cold metal. No wind moves it. The mountains on either side rise steep and dark, their upper slopes already white, their lower slopes still showing the deep green-black of pine and the bare grey of birch that has dropped its leaves. The air is very clean and very cold. It has a taste to it, faintly of salt from the water and faintly of wood smoke from somewhere below you, and when you breathe it in, it seems to reach further into you than ordinary air, all the way down, cool and clarifying. Snow is beginning to fall, not heavily. The first snow of a real winter rarely comes in a hurry. It comes the way it is coming now, in single flakes, large and slow and unhurried, drifting down out of a sky the colour of old pewter, each one taking its own long wandering path to the ground. You can watch a single flake for the whole length of its fall if you choose to, and it will not be rushed. Below you, near the water's edge, there is a farmstead. It is not large. A long, low building with grass growing on its roof, so that from a distance it seems almost to be a part of the hill itself, a green ridge with smoke rising gently from one end. Around it, smaller shapes, half buried in the slope. A few thin paths worn into the earth between them. A fence. A handful of animals moving slowly, being brought in from the open ground. This is where we're going to stay. This long building with grass on its roof is going to be our shelter for the whole of the coming winter, and the people moving slowly around it, finishing the last of the autumn's work before the dark closes in, are going to be the company we keep. There is no hurry to go down. The snow will keep falling at its own gentle pace. The light will fade slowly, as it always does. For now, simply stand here a moment longer, on the hill above the water, and let the quiet of the place settle over you. The stillness of deep water, the patience of old mountains, the slow, drifting, endless fall of the first snow. Then, when you are ready, we will walk down the worn path toward the house, and step out of the cold, and into the long warm dark of the room where the winter will be lived. There is no need to move from the hill just yet. The cold here is real, but it is a clean cold, and you are only watching, and watching costs the body nothing. So let your eyes travel slowly over the whole of the scene below, the way you might let your eyes travel over a familiar room before sleep, taking each thing in turn, lingering, letting it grow soft and known. The water of the fjord first. It is so still that it has become a mirror, and in it the dark mountains stand upside down, doubled, the real peaks above and their drowned reflections below, and between them a thin band of pale sky. Now and then a single flake of snow touches the surface and makes one slow ring, one widening circle of the faintest movement, and then the water is glass again. The fjord is patient. It has been here since the ice of an older world carved it, and it will be here long after this winter, and 1,000 winters more, and it holds the falling snow and the standing mountains and the fading light with the same deep, unhurried calm. The mountains, next. They rise on both sides, steep and folded, and the snow has begun to find them, settling first in the high places and the shadowed clefts, picking out the shape of the land in white, so that the mountains seem to be slowly drawing themselves, line by line, as you watch. Their lower slopes are dark with the close-standing pines, each pine already carrying its small load of snow on every branch, bowed very slightly under it, patient as the mountains themselves, and the farmstead, last and smallest, down at the meeting place of the water and the land. From up here it is a humble thing, low and long and half-grown into the hill, the smoke rising from it straight and thin and unwavering in the windless air, climbing a long way up before it softens and spreads and is lost against the grey. That single line of smoke is the surest sign of all that the place is alive, that there are people down there, and a fire and warmth, and the slow, ordinary business of a household preparing to meet the winter. The light is going now, gently, the way it always goes, not in any sudden way, but by slow degrees, the grey deepening toward blue, the white of the snow beginning to hold more light than the sky above it, the single flakes still come down, unhurried, each on its own wandering path, and the cold settles and deepens, and the great stillness of the northern evening comes down over the water and the mountains and the small smoking house like a hand laid very gently over everything, quieting it, telling it that the day is done. It is time now to go down, not quickly. There is never any need in this whole long winter to do anything quickly. But the warmth is waiting, and the fire is lit, and the path is short and known. So begin to walk slowly down the pale worn ribbon of it, toward the low green house and the thin line of smoke and the long warm dark within. The path down to the farmstead is short, and it has been walked so many times by so many feet over so many years that the earth of it is packed hard and smooth. Even now, with the snow beginning to gather, the line of the path shows clearly a pale ribbon winding down the slope. As you come closer, the long building grows and resolves itself out of the dusk. It is called a longhouse. That plain name describes it well, because it is, more than anything, simply long. It is far longer than it is wide, a single great room stretched out along the contour of the hill, perhaps 30 paces from one end to the other, perhaps more. Its walls are low and immensely thick. Its roof is high and steeply pitched, and it is covered, as you saw from the hill in living turf, a skin of soil and grass laid over the timber, so that the house wears the same green coat as the land it stands on. Those thick walls are the first of the winter's many quiet defences, and they are worth pausing on. In a place like this, where straight building timber is precious, and the wind off the water can be merciless, the people do not build thin walls of plank and hope. They build walls of the earth itself, layers of cut turf and sod stacked like enormous bricks, sometimes with a core of stone, sometimes laid up against a light wooden frame, until the wall is as thick as a person is tall. A wall like that does something very simple and very important. It holds. It holds the cold out and it holds the warmth in, and it does so not by fighting the winter but by sheer patient mass. The earth has what the people who study these things call thermal mass. It is slow to warm and slow to cool. A freezing wind can blow against a turf wall for a whole day and night, and barely trouble the inside because the wall is too thick and too heavy, and too slow to be hurried. The house, in this way, borrows the steadiness of the ground. The roof of turf does the same work overhead. Grass and soil over timber, a thick green blanket holding the warmth of the room beneath it the way a heavy quilt holds the warmth of a sleeping body. And there is a quiet kindness in it for the timber too, because the living sod keeps the wooden frame beneath from drying and cracking, and shelters it from the insects that bore into bare exposed wood. The house protects its own bones. You reach the door. It is low, set into the thickness of the wall, and you must bend your head to pass through it. That low door is deliberate. A small opening lets out less warmth than a large one. Everything in this house, you will find, has a reason, and most of the reasons are the same reason. Keep the warmth, keep the warmth, keep the warmth. You step through, and out of the cold, and into the long, dim room where the winter will be spent. Pause before you go in, and simply stand beside the longhouse a moment, with one hand resting against the cold, rough surface of its wall, and let the building teach you what it is. Under your hand the wall is not wood, and it is not stone. It is earth. It is the land itself, cut and lifted and stacked. Layers of turf, each layer a slab of soil bound together by the deep roots of the grass that grew in it, laid one upon another, course on course, the way a wall of brick is laid, until the whole has risen to the height of the low eaves, and it is thick. If you were to set both your arms against it, fingertip to fingertip, you might still not span the depth of it. It is less a wall, in the way you might usually think of a wall, than a long low embankment, a ridge of the earth raised up and shaped into a room, and that is the secret of its warmth, and it is worth understanding slowly because it is a beautiful and simple thing. The earth changes its temperature slowly. It is reluctant. A thin sheet of wood or metal will take on the cold of a winter night within an hour, and pass that cold straight through to whatever it shelters. But a great thick mass of packed earth cannot be cooled so easily. The cold would have to work its way in through arm after arm of dense soil, and it is slow, terribly slow, and the winter night is simply not long enough for it. By the time the cold has crept even a little way into the wall, the morning has come, and the day, and the wall begins just as slowly to be warmed again. So the longhouse, wrapped in its thick coat of turf, lives at a temperature all its own. The wild swings of the weather outside, the bitter clear nights and the brief grey days are smoothed away, dampened, softened, by the patient slowness of the earth. Inside it is simply, steadily, reliably warmer, and the fire that the household burns has only to add a little to that borrowed steadiness rather than fight the whole weight of the winter alone. Look up now at the roof. It carries the same green coat. turf and growing grass laid over the timber and the bark beneath, a thick living blanket pulled over the whole house. In summer there might be small flowers growing up there, and the household's goats have been known to climb up and graze a longhouse roof, as if it were simply a steep green field, which, in a way, it is. But in winter the roof grass lies dormant under the snow, and the snow itself, once it has settled deep enough, becomes one more layer of the house's shelter, because snow, strange as it seems, is itself a kind of warmth. It is full of trapped still air, and it holds the heat of the house beneath it the way it holds the warmth of the sleeping earth, and a longhouse deep under a winter's snow is a longhouse wrapped in one more soft white insulating quilt. This is the building, then, that you're about to enter. Not a flimsy thing braced against the winter, but a low strong shape made of the land itself, holding its own gentle climate within thick earthen walls, roofed in living turf and blanketing snow. It has sheltered this family through many winters. It will shelter them through this one, and tonight it will shelter you. For a moment inside you can see almost nothing. After the open grey of the snow, the longhouse is very dark and the air is thick and brown with wood smoke, and your eyes need time. So stand still in the doorway and let them adjust slowly, the way you might let your eyes adjust in a dark room before sleep. Shapes begin to come forward out of the gloom, a long low space, a high roof lost in shadow far above, and down the centre of the room, running almost its whole length, a line of soft red and orange light. That is the hearth. It is the heart of the house in the most literal way, and once your eyes have found it, you understand the whole room at once, because the whole room is arranged around it. The hearth is not a small thing. It is a long, narrow pit of stone set down the centre line of the longhouse, lined and edged with stones stood upright in the packed earth. Along its length, a fire burns. Not a roaring fire, not a wasteful one. A steady, well-tended, working fire, kept low and even, banked and fed with the patient attention of people who know exactly what their winter's woodpile holds, and exactly how long it must last. There is no chimney. This is one of the first things to understand about living here. The smoke from the fire does not leave through a neat stone flue. It rises straight up into the dark heights of the roof, and there it gathers and spreads and forms a slow-moving layer of warm brown haze among the rafters, before it finds its own way out, seeping gradually through the porous thatch or drifting through a small adjustable opening in the gable. This means the air of the longhouse is never entirely clear. Down low, near the floor, it is breathable enough. Higher up, it thickens into smoke. You learn, living here, to keep your head in the lower, cleaner air, and that single fact shapes how the whole room is used. The floor beneath your feet is packed earth, hard as fired clay from the pressure of generations of feet. Down the central aisle, around the hearth, the earth has been dressed with a thick scattering of wood ash, pale and soft and dry, which drinks up spills and damp and mud and keeps the walking way of the house sound, and the warmth. Now that you're inside, with the low door shut behind you, you can feel it. It is not the sharp, dry heat of a modern room. It is something older and gentler, a deep, even, smoky warmth that has been built up slowly over many days and is held now by the thick turf walls like water held in a cupped hand. It wraps around you. It reaches your cold face and your cold hands and begins, without hurry, to thaw them. Stand here in it a moment. You have come in out of the snow. The fire is lit. The walls are thick. The long dark of the winter is beginning, but you're inside it now, and you are warm, and there is nowhere else you need to go tonight. Come back now to the fire, and let us sit with it a while longer, because the fire deserves a slow and patient attention. It is the one thing in this whole house that must never be allowed to fail, and so it is the one thing the household watches most closely, and there is a deep calm to be found in simply watching it as they watch it. The hearth runs long down the centre of the room, a channel of stone set into the packed earth, and the fire within it is not built the way you might build a fire for a single bright evening. It is built to last. It is built to be a steady, constant, all-winter thing. So it is kept low, it is kept even. It is fed with a patient, measured hand, log by carefully chosen log, never more than the moment needs, because every log burned tonight is a log that cannot be burned in the deep cold weeks still to come, and the woodpile, like the hay and the stored food, is a known and finite thing. Watch the flames themselves. They are low and they move gently, leaning and recovering, climbing and sinking, never the same shape twice. Watch the wood beneath them slowly transform, the bark blackening and curling, the grain opening into glowing seams, a log over long hours giving up everything it is, all the captured summers of its growth, into heat and light and a soft drift of grey ash. The fire is not violent here, it is patient, it is doing slow, quiet, essential work, and it asks only to be tended and fed and not forgotten. And feel, again, the warmth of it on your skin. It reaches you in a particular way, the warmth of an open hearth, not as a single steady wall of heat, but as something living and slightly uneven, a warmth that pulses very faintly as the flames rise and settle, that you feel most on the side of you that faces the fire while your other side stays cool, so that simply by being near it, you are always aware of it, always held in a gentle conversation with it. People who live their whole lives by such a fire come to know it the way they know a voice. They can hear from across the room, in the particular crackle and settle of it, whether it is content or whether it wants feeding. They can read its mood in the colour of its embers. Above the flames the smoke rises in its slow grey columns, climbing, spreading, gathering far up in the unseen heights of the roof, into that dim, warm, drifting layer among the rafters. It is never quite still, that smoke. The faint movements of the air in the room set it slowly turning, slowly folding over itself, an endless soft brown weather high up beneath the thatch. And through it, here and there, where the roof is thin or a gable vent stands open, a little of the grey daylight or the blue dark of evening filters down, a soft shaft catching the smoke, making it visible, a slow drift of light and haze in the upper air of the house. It is one of the most restful things in the world, a low fire watched by someone with nothing they must do. The household, through the long winter evenings, sits by this fire exactly so, and lets their eyes rest in the flames, and lets their thoughts slow to the pace of the burning wood. There is something in a fire that asks the mind to let go. It moves enough to hold the eye, and yet it asks nothing, decides nothing, demands nothing. It only burns gently, and gives out its warmth, and turns the slow logs into ash, and carries the household hour by hour through the dark. As your eyes settle further into the dim red light, the rest of the long room reveals itself, and it is a room built entirely for warmth and for stillness. Along both of the long walls running the full length of the house on either side of the central hearth, there are raised wooden benches. They are wide and solid, built up off the floor topped with thick planks, and they are perhaps the most important furniture in the whole of Norse life, because they are almost everything. They are where the household sits, they are where it works, they are where it eats, and they are where in time it sleeps. The reason they are raised up off the ground is the same quiet reason behind so much else here. Cold air is heavy, it sinks, it pulls along the floor of any room and moves there in slow invisible currents, and the lowest part of any space is always the coldest. So the people of the Longhouse lift their living up out of that cold floor air. To sit on the bench is to sit above the draught, in the better, warmer layer of the room, closer to the rising heat of the fire. Along these benches, and tucked into the dark, useful space beneath them, is everything the household owns and everything the winter will need. Heavy wooden chests carved and pegged, holding tools and cloth, and the small treasures of the family. Standing against the wall in places the tall frame of a loom, a vertical loom, its rows of woven cloth growing slowly downward, its warp threads held taut by hanging weights of fired clay or stone. Bundles of raw wool, spindles, baskets, the patient apparatus of a household that for the next half a year is going to make almost everything it uses by its own hands, in this one room, by this one fire. In the wealthier longhouses there might be more. There might be a wooden ladder rising into a sleeping loft, a low platform built up under the rafters where the rising heat collects, and the air is warmest of all, though it is also where the smoke is thickest, and so even comfort here comes with its quiet trade. But you do not need a loft tonight. The bench is enough. Picture yourself settling onto one of these long wooden benches now, near the middle of the house, close enough to the hearth to feel its steady glow on your skin. There are sheepskins here, and folded woolen blankets, thick and slightly rough and deeply warm, and you can draw them around yourself. Below you, the cold floor. Above you, the dark smoke-filled rafters. And here, in this narrow band between the two, on this bench, by this fire, wrapped in this wool, is the warm middle layer of the world, the safe seam of it, where the winter is waited out. Let yourself rest there a while. The fire moves and settles. The house is quiet around you. The snow goes on falling soundlessly beyond the thick turf walls, and it cannot reach you here. Settle deeper onto the warm bench now, and let yourself feel, slowly and fully, what it is to be in exactly the right place in this house. The longhouse, you have come to understand, is a room of layers. There is the cold floor air, low down, where the drafts move in their slow, invisible currents. There is the smoke, high up, gathered thick and brown among the dark rafters. And between those two, neither too low nor too high, there is a band of air that is simply, perfectly right, warm from the fire, clear of the smoke, still and gentle and kind. And the raised bench places you exactly there, in that good middle seam of the room, the warmest and the cleanest, and the most restful place the longhouse has to give. The household has known this for 1,000 years. Every bench in every longhouse is built to lift its people up into that good band of air, and the wisdom of it is so old that no one in the house even thinks of it anymore. They simply climb up onto the bench at the end of the day, the way you might simply pull the blankets over yourself, and they are, without thinking about it, in the right place. And the bench beneath you is solid and broad and made for rest. Thick planks, worn smooth by long years of use, spread now with sheepskins, the fleece deep and soft, and with the folded woolen blankets, heavy and warm. You can feel how the whole arrangement gathers you in. The firm support of the planks beneath, the yielding softness of the fleece, the good weight of the wool drawn over you, pressing you down gently into the warmth. Above you the dark rafters lost in their shadow, beside you the long low red line of the banked fire. Around you the thick patient walls. There is nothing to do here. That is the deepest truth of this warm middle seam of the longhouse. The day's work is done, the fire is tended and banked, the animals are quiet, the food is stored, the winter is being lived exactly and only by resting through this part of it. To lie on this bench, in this band of good warm air wrapped in this wool, is to be doing the night's work perfectly, because the night's only work is rest. So let the bench hold you. Let the warmth gather. Let yourself sink, slow and heavy and content, into the right place, in the warm dark, by the fire. Before we go further into the winter, just a soft word, and then we will not interrupt the quiet again for a long while. If this slow journey is helping you towards sleep, you're welcome to follow this channel so that there will always be another long calm night like this one waiting for you whenever you need it. That is all. Let it go now, and let us return to the snow, and the firelight, and the long warm room by the water. Now, lying still on your warm bench by the fire, you become aware of a sound you had not noticed before. It has been there all along, low and constant, beneath the soft crackle of the hearth. But only now, as you grow still, do you hear it clearly. It is the sound of animals, slow, heavy, living sounds, the shift of a hoof in straw, the long sigh of a cow's breath, a low rustle, a soft snort, the small private noises of large warm bodies settling for the night. The animals are in the house with you. At the far end of the longhouse, beyond a wooden partition that divides the great room in two, lies the byre, the indoor cattle stalls, and through the long dark months of winter, the household and its herd live under one single grass-covered roof. The cattle, the sheep, the goats, brought in from the killing cold of the open ground, and stalled here in rows, behind their low wooden divisions for the whole of the season. It can sound, at first, like a hard way to live, but it is one of the wisest and most generous arrangements in the whole of this winter world, and it works in two directions at once, and both of them are kind. It is kind to the animals, plainly. Outside, the open winter would kill them. Inside, behind the thick turf walls, sheltered and fed, they live. But it is also quietly kind to the people, because a large animal is a furnace that never goes out. A cow, a horse, an ox, simply by being alive, by breathing and digesting and standing there in the warm dark, gives off a steady, gentle, endless heat. And in the byre at the end of the longhouse there are many such animals, and all of them, all winter long, are giving off that warmth, and that warmth rises, and it spreads, and it drifts through and over the wooden partition into the living half of the house. The herd, in other words, helps to heat the home. The breath of the cattle warms the children, and every measure of warmth the animals provide is a measure of precious firewood that need not be burned. The household and the herd keep one another alive, sharing their heat across a wooden wall, two halves of a single living thing waiting out the same long night. So that sound, the slow shift and sigh of the animals at the dark end of the house, is not something to be troubled by. It is the sound of the winter's arrangement working exactly as it should. It is the sound of warmth being made. Let it become part of the quiet of the place, as steady and as unremarkable as the fire. The breathing of the herd, the patient warm presence of other lives near you in the dark, all of you sheltering together. Let your mind go for a while to the dark end of the house, beyond the wooden partition, and rest among the animals there, because the byre at night is one of the most peaceful places in the whole of this winter world. It is dim there, dimmer than the living half of the house, the firelight reaching it only faintly in a soft, far glow. The air is close and warm and full of the smell of the herd and of hay and of the earth. A thick, living smell, not unpleasant once it is known, the smell of warmth being made, and the animals stand in their stalls, in their rows, divided each from the next by low wooden boards, settled for the night. The cattle are the great quiet presences. They stand mostly, even in sleep, their heavy heads low, their breath coming slow and long and audible, a deep soft rhythm. Now and then one shifts its weight, a hoof moving in the strewn hay with a soft dry rustle, and then is still again. Their warmth comes off them in a way you could almost lean against, a broad, gentle, radiant heat, and it rises, all of it, all night, and drifts up and over the partition into the room where the people sleep. A single cow, standing in the dark, is doing real and generous work simply by being alive and warm. The sheep and the goats are smaller and more numerous, gathered closer together, a soft mass of wool in the dimness, and they too give off their warmth and their slow breath. And they too are content, fed and sheltered, out of the killing wind, waiting in the warm dark for the spring that will let them out again onto the green. And there is a deep companionship in it, when you let yourself feel it rightly. Through the long winter the people and the animals are not separate. They share the one roof and the one held warmth and the one long night. The household falls asleep to the slow breathing of the herd, and the herd settles in the faint glow and faint sound of the household, and all of them together. The people and the cattle and the sheep and the goats are one single, warm, sheltering company, breathing in the dark, waiting out the winter side by side. To lie in the longhouse and hear, through the wooden wall, the slow shift and sigh of the resting animals is to be reminded, in the simplest way, that you're not alone in the night. Other lives are near, other warmth is being made and shared. The whole house, in all its parts, is alive and breathing and at rest together, and there is nothing in that sound but peace. Bringing the animals inside, though, raises a quiet and serious question, and it is a question the household will already have answered weeks ago in the cold, clear light of autumn. The question is simply this: how many of them can be fed? Through the summer, the animals feed themselves. The grass grows, they graze, the work is the earth's, but in winter the grass does not grow. Nothing grows, and so every mouthful of food that every animal eats, across the whole of the long, dark season, must already be cut and dried and stacked and stored before the winter begins. The hay in the barn is a fixed and finite thing. When it is gone, there is no more. And so, every autumn, the farmer performs a careful and sober reckoning. It has the feel of an accounting up and a weighing. On the one side, the hay, the exact known quantity of dried grass and leaf fodder that the summer's labour has managed to gather in. On the other side, the herd, the exact number of hungry animals and the exact amount each one will need to eat to last until the spring. If the two sides match, the household is fortunate. But often they do not match. Often the hay is not quite enough to carry every animal through to the far side of winter, and then the farmer must make the hard, clear-eyed decision that this season demands. Some of the animals cannot be kept. There is not food for all of them, and so, in the autumn, before the cold sets fully in, a portion of the herd is slaughtered. It is not done in cruelty, and it is not done in waste. It is done with knowledge. The farmer chooses with great care. The strongest breeding stock is kept. The best of the milking cows, the animals most valuable to the future, are preserved and fed through, and those that are culled are not lost at all because their meat becomes the winter's food, preserved and stored against the hungry months, so that the animals that cannot be carried through the winter become, instead, the very thing that carries the people through it. There is a deep old steadiness in this. The autumn cull is the moment the household squares itself honestly with the coming season. It looks at what it truly has and at what the winter will truly cost, and it brings the two into balance. It does not pretend. It does not hope against the arithmetic. It counts what is real, and it acts on what it counts, and then, having done so, it can rest. The reckoning, once made, is made. The herd that remains in the byre is a herd that can be fed, and that quiet certainty, bought with a hard autumn decision, is one of the things that lets the household sleep through the winter nights. There is something worth pausing on in this matter of the autumn reckoning, because it holds a quiet wisdom that reaches well beyond the keeping of cattle. The farmer, in the clear cold light of autumn, does not guess. The farmer does not hope. The farmer does not look at the herd and the hay and tell a comfortable story about how it will probably all work out. The farmer counts, honestly, carefully, item by item. This much hay, truly, no more. This many animals, truly, each needing this much to last. And then the farmer looks at the two real numbers side by side and accepts what they say, even when what they say is hard. And once that honest reckoning is made, something is set free. The worry is over. The hard decision, made cleanly in the autumn, does not have to be made again, in fear, in the deep of the winter, when the hay runs low. It has been handled. The herd that stands in the byre is a herd that has been counted against the hay, and found to fit. And so the farmer, through all the long cold months, can tend that herd without dread, knowing the feed will reach the spring, because the matching of the two was done truthfully in advance. There is a deep calm available in that way of meeting a hard thing, and it is a calm you can carry into your own rest. So much of worry is the refusal to count honestly, the turning away from the real numbers, the hoping in place of the knowing, and so much of peace is the opposite, the willingness to look plainly at what is true, to make the clear decision it asks for, and then, having made it, to set the worry down, because the thing has been handled and does not need handling again. The longhouse, through all its winter, runs on that kind of peace. The herd was counted, the harvest was gathered and measured and stored, the wood was cut and stacked. Each hard thing was met, honestly and in good time, by the work of the warmer season. And so the household, when the dark closes in, has nothing left to do but live the winter it has already, carefully prepared for. The worrying was done in the autumn. The winter itself can simply be rested through. So the killing of autumn is done, and the byre holds only the animals that the hay can carry, and the longhouse must now turn to its other great winter question. Not how to keep the herd alive, but how to keep the family fed through month after month in which no new food of any kind will grow. The answer fills the house. Look around the warm, dim room again, and you begin to see it everywhere. The stored abundance of a year's work, the harvest turned into a form that will keep. The whole art of it is the art of stopping time. Fresh food, left to itself, spoils. It is alive with the small, invisible processes of decay, and those processes need three things to do their work. They need moisture, and they need warmth, and they need air. And every method of preserving food that the longhouse uses is, underneath, simply a way of taking one of those three things away. Consider the fish first, because in this country of deep fjords and cold seas, fish is a foundation. Out on the racks beyond the house, in the killing cold and the dry sea wind, the gutted fish are hung to dry, and the cold dry air does something quietly remarkable. It draws the water straight out of the flesh, slowly, completely, until the fish is no longer soft flesh at all, but something hard and light and dense and almost wooden, a stockfish, stiff as a board, and in that dried and hardened state it will not spoil. It cannot. The decay has been starved of the moisture it needs, and so the fish will keep, not for days, not for weeks, but for years. A single dry fish on the rack is a meal set aside for a winter that has not yet come. Consider the meat from the autumn slaughter. Much of it is preserved by souring. It is packed down into great wooden vats and covered over in sour whey, the tart liquid left behind from the making of cheese and skyr. Submerged in that acid bath, sealed away from the air, the meat is held. the sourness itself becomes a kind of guardian. The conditions that decay would need are simply not there, and so the meat waits, tender and safe, in its wooden vat, for the hand that will lift it out in the deep of winter. Consider the meat and the fish hung high in the rafters of the longhouse itself, up in the slow brown drift of the hearth smoke. Day after day that gentle smoke moves over them, and it carries with it substances that settle on the surface of the food and form an invisible protective skin, and the steady warmth of the rising air slowly dries the flesh within. Smoked and dried and quietly guarded, the food keeps. The same fire that warms the family is, all the while, curing the family's winter stores in the air above their heads, and the cookery itself in this house has its own slow character. The great method is boiling. A heavy iron cauldron hangs from a chain above the hearth, and into it go the preserved meats and the dried things and the grains, to simmer long and slow, until everything in the pot has given up its goodness into the broth, every scrap of fat and marrow and nourishment drawn out and kept, because in a winter house nothing good is allowed to escape. Some of the vessels are carved from soapstone, a soft grey stone that takes the heat of the fire kindly, never cracks, and holds its warmth for hours after the flames have died, so that the stone itself becomes a slow keeper of heat, radiating it back into the room long after the cooking is done. Then there are the grains, barley and oats, ground between stones into a coarse flour, and made most often into porridge, a thick warm grain pottage simmered in water or milk or thinned whey, the steady daily food of the dark months, plain and filling and kind, and baked too into flat dense unleavened bread, cooked on a hot stone or an iron griddle at the edge of the fire. And the grain becomes one thing more. It is brewed. The household makes ale in real quantity, and this is not indulgence but sense, because brewing takes the goodness of the grain and locks it into a form that will not rot, a sustaining drink that keeps when stored, that carries its own quiet warmth, and that, being brewed, is safer to drink than much of the standing water. The ale in the vats is the harvest in liquid form, calories saved from spoilage, set aside for the cold. So the longhouse, as the winter closes around it, is not a place of hunger. It is a place of stores, dried fish, hard as wood, soured meat under its blanket of whey, smoked flesh in the dark rafters, soapstone pots and sacks of ground grain and vats of quiet ale. The whole house is a larder, carefully filled across a year of work and now sealed up warm against the dark. The harvest is in. The food will last, and that too, like the balanced herd in the byre, is a reason the household can lie down in the long night and rest. Let the eye move slowly now around the longhouse, and take a quiet inventory of the winter's stores, because there is a deep and settling reassurance in simply seeing how much there is, and how carefully it has all been put by. High in the rafters, up in the slow drift of the hearth smoke, hang the shapes of the smoked and drying meats and fish, darkened on the outside, guarded by the smoke, swaying very slightly in the faint moving air of the upper room. They have been hanging there for weeks. They will hang there still longer, curing slowly, perfectly placed, and when they are needed in the deep of the cold, they will be lifted down whole and good. Against the walls, and in the cooler corners, the great wooden vats. In one, the soured meats packed down and submerged in their whey, sealed away from the air, waiting tender and safe. In another, the stores of dairy that the summer's milk became, the dense curd, the salted butter pressed down hard in its tub, all of it stable, all of it keeping. The richness of the green months held in a form the winter cannot spoil. Sacks and baskets of the ground grain, the barley and the oats, the daily bread and porridge of the months to come, the carved soapstone pots and the iron cauldron, the patient cookware, the vats of ale brewed strong in the autumn, the grain's goodness held safe in the drink, and out beyond the walls on the racks in the cold dry wind, the stockfish, hard as wood, all but indestructible, a wall of stored protein that will outlast the whole winter and more. Stand in the middle of all of it, in the warm dim room, and feel what it means. It means the autumn did its work. It means a whole year of labour, the planting and the reaping and the fishing and the slaughter and the drying and the souring and the smoking and the brewing has been gathered in and turned into this, into stores, into a house that is full. The growing season is over and nothing new will come until the spring, and that is a hard fact. but it is a fact the household has already answered, completely in advance. The answer is all around you, hanging in the rafters and packed in the vats and stacked in the baskets. The food is here. It was made to last, and it will last, and the household, looking round its full warm room, knows that it will last and is at peace. This is the deep logic of the whole winter, and it is worth carrying down towards sleep. The hard season is met not in the moment but long beforehand, by patient work done in the kinder months and quietly stored away. The summer feeds the winter. The labour of the light feeds the rest of the dark, and a household that has done that work well can sit by its fire through the longest night of the year, with the wind in the turf above it and the snow deep on the ground, and feel no fear at all, only the slow, warm certainty of a larder honestly filled. Now let your attention come back, slowly, to your own body, resting here on the warm bench. Specifically, let it come to the clothing that wraps you, because in a winter like this one, the clothes a person wears are not decoration, and they are not habit. They are quite simply the closest and most personal of all the winter's shelters. The longhouse is the shelter you live inside. The clothing is the shelter you carry with you, the one small warm room that travels on your own skin wherever you go. And the people of this place understand that shelter deeply. They have thought about it the way they have thought about everything else, slowly, practically, across many generations. And what they have arrived at is a system, a way of dressing in layers, each layer doing one particular task. The whole principle of it is the trapping of warm, still air. Cold does not pass easily through air that is held in place. It is movement that steals warmth, the wind that finds its way in, the draught that carries heat away. And so the layered clothing of the Norse is built to capture little pockets of air, close to the body, and hold them still, and let the body's own warmth gather in them. A person well dressed for this winter is, in effect, wrapped in their own gentle climate. The layer closest to the skin is a soft undertunic, an inner garment worn next to the body. For those who can come by it, this is made of linen, smooth and kind against the skin, good at drawing away the faint moisture the body always makes, so that the skin stays dry and dry skin stays warm. For many, the inner layer is instead a fine soft wool, and wool has a quiet, almost magical virtue that is worth knowing. Wool keeps its warmth even when it is damp. Many materials, once wet, turn cold and cling and steal the heat from a body. Wool does not. Wool stays kind. In a wet northern winter, that single property is worth more than gold. Over the inner layer comes the main insulating layer, the heavy work of keeping warm. A thick woolen overtunic, well made, cut with care, shaped under the arms and along the sides so that it moves easily with the body and never binds, fitting close enough to keep the drafts out but never so close as to pinch. Warm woolen leggings or trousers below, and around the lower legs, wound from the knee down to the foot, long narrow strips of woven wool spiralled snugly around the calf, closing the gap where cold and snow would otherwise find their way in, gathering the loose cloth, holding the leg in a firm, warm wrapping. And over everything, when a person must go out into the wind, the outer layer, a great heavy cloak of coarse wool, rich with the natural grease of the sheep, the lanolin still in the fibre. And that grease is itself a quiet gift, because it makes the wool shed water. The sleet and the wet snow do not soak into a lanolin-rich cloak. They bead, and they gather, and they roll away, and the wearer stays dry beneath. The cloak is pinned at one shoulder with a brooch or a heavy pin, wrapping the body in a single warm sheet of weatherproof wool. The hands and the feet and the head, the far edges of the body where warmth is hardest to keep, are guarded by their own particular crafts. Socks and mittens and hoods are made by an old looping technique worked with a single needle, producing a fabric exceptionally dense and windtight, a fabric that holds its shape and its warmth even when it is worn and damp, and that will not unravel if a thread is snagged or cut. The feet go into shoes and boots of leather, sewn with a clever inside-out construction that hides the seams away inside, where the water cannot find them, and the leather is worked over with a blend of grease and fat and pitch to make it supple and watertight, rubbed especially well into the seams where the sole meets the upper, so that the melting snow stays out and the warmth stays in. Picture all of that, layer upon careful layer, and feel how completely it would hold a body. Linen or soft wool against the skin, heavy wool over it, wound wool at the calves, a greased cloak over all, dense looped wool at the hands and the feet. It is not a single garment but a whole, quiet architecture of warmth, built outward from the skin, and a person wrapped in it can walk out into the falling snow and the cutting wind and carry, with them, wherever they go, one small portable room of held and gathered heat. Lie still a while longer, and feel, in detail, the wool that wraps you, because there is a quiet wonder in this cloth, and it is worth knowing slowly. Every part of what covers you began as the coat of a living animal, out on the green summer hills. It was shorn and washed and combed straight, and then drawn out and twisted into thread on the slow-turning spindle, and then woven, thread crossing thread, into cloth on the tall loom against the wall, and then the cloth was cut and shaped and sewn into the garment that now holds your warmth. Every step of that long making was done by hand, by the people of this house, or of houses like it, in rooms like this one, by fires like this one. The garment is not a thing bought, it is a thing grown and spun and woven and made, and the wool itself is kind in ways that are easy to overlook. It is full of tiny crimped fibres, each one curling and springing, and between them they trap a great deal of still air, and it is that trapped still air, more than the fibre itself, that holds the warmth. To wear wool is to wear a layer of captured air, warmed by your own body, held gently in place, and wool keeps that kindness even when it is damp, which in a wet northern winter is a mercy beyond price, so that a person caught out in the sleet does not find their warmth suddenly stolen, but stays held, stays warm, even as the cloth grows heavy with the wet. Feel, too, the weight of the layers, and how the weight itself is a comfort. The soft inner garment against the skin, the heavy overtunic above it, the wound wool snug around the calves, and, for going out, the great greased cloak over all. It is a real weight, the full winter dress of the Norse, a substantial wrapping, and there is something in that weight that the body welcomes, a sense of being firmly and completely held, gathered in, enclosed. It is not so very different from the weight of the blankets over you now, the good heavy pull of them, the way they press you gently down into rest, and at the hands and the feet, the dense looped work of the socks and the mittens, fabric made not by interlocking knot until it is thick and tight and windproof and will not come undone, and the leather of the boots worked soft and waterproof with grease and fat and pitch, sealed at every seam against the snow. The body's far edges, its most vulnerable points, each one carefully and particularly guarded, so you are wrapped, head to foot, in a whole considered architecture of warmth, every layer of it grown from the land and made by hand and placed with knowledge. And whether you are walking out across the snow or lying still here by the fire, the principle is the same, and it is a gentle one. Trap the warmth, hold the still air, let the body make its heat and let the wool keep it close. You are held, you are wrapped, and there is nothing for the cold to take. And there is one more thing to know about the wool, lying here in the warm, and it is the loveliest thing of all, because it turns all of this winter's clothing into a kind of long, quiet conversation between the seasons. None of this wool buys itself, none of it appears. Every thread of it, every garment, every sock and mitten and cloak is made by hand, in this room, through the long hours of these very winter nights, by the people sheltering here. This is one of the great labours of the Norse winter, and it is a gentle one. Through the dark months, whenever the hands are not needed for something else, they are working wool. The raw fleece is cleaned and combed. It is drawn out and spun on a hanging spindle that turns and turns, twisting the loose fibre into a strong continuous thread, hour after hour, a small steady motion repeated until it becomes as natural as breathing. And the thread is woven, on the tall upright loom standing against the wall, its weights hanging heavy and even, the cloth growing slowly downward, row by patient row. Think of the shape of it. Through the short days and the long dark evenings, the household sits close to the fire and turns one season into another with its hands. It takes the wool the summer's sheep have grown, and slowly, over the whole winter, makes from it the warm cloth that the family will wear. The work of the cold months becomes the warmth of the months to come. Nothing is wasted, not even the time. Even the long dark hours themselves are spun quietly into cloth. So when you imagine the longhouse at night, full and warm, do not imagine it idle. Imagine the soft sounds of that gentle industry threaded all through it. The faint whir of the turning spindle, the small wooden knock of the loom weights, the low murmur of voices telling the old stories to pass the working hours. It is calm work, repetitive work, the kind of work the hands can do while the mind drifts and rests. And it is the sound of a household clothing itself, slowly and surely, against every winter still to come. Listen, for a while, to the soft sounds of the working household, because they are among the most peaceful sounds in the world, and they can carry you gently towards sleep. There is the fire, always, beneath everything. The small steady crackle and tick of the burning wood, the faint settling sigh as a log shifts and gives way, the softer breathing pulse of the flames. It is a sound with no edges to it, no sharpness, nothing that asks for attention, only a low warm presence, the voice of the hearth murmuring on through the hours, and woven through it the sounds of the slow indoor work, the faint whir of the spindle as it turns and drops and is wound and turns again, that small repeating rhythm, almost like a quiet breath, as the loose wool becomes thread. The soft wooden knock of the loom weights swinging just slightly as a new row is beaten into the growing cloth. The low murmur of voices talking quietly over the work or telling, slowly, one of the long old tales, the words rising and falling, the meaning hardly mattering, only the warm, steady current of the voice. Now and then a smaller sound, the shift of someone settling, the soft thud of a fresh log laid on the fire, the faint dry rustle of the animals at the far end of the house, a child's quiet question and a quiet answer, and then the soft sounds simply continue, the fire, the spindle, the loom, the voices, the slow, gentle weather of a household at its winter work. There is nothing in any of it to startle or to rouse you. It is all low, and all soft, and all slow, and all unhurried, the sound of people doing the patient ordinary work of getting through the winter calmly together by the fire. It is the sound a child of the Longhouse would have fallen asleep to, every night of every winter, the whole of their childhood, the safe-known sound of the household carrying on around them while they drifted off. Let it be that for you now. Let the fire and the spindle and the loom and the murmuring voices become the soft background weather of your own drift towards sleep, a warm sound with no edges, telling you gently that all is well, that the work is being done, that you may safely let go now and rest. It would be easy, lying here, warm and wrapped and listening to the spindle turn, to imagine that the winter seals the Longhouse away entirely, that once the snow has fallen and the dark has come, the household is shut up alone inside its turf walls until the spring, cut off from every other living soul. But that is not so, and the truth of it is one of the quiet surprises of this world, a turning around of what you might expect. Because in this country, in a strange and wonderful way, the winter does not close the land, the winter opens it. Think of what this country is in the warmer seasons. It is mountains, it is deep trackless forest, it is rivers too swift and cold to cross, and wide soft bogs of waterlogged peat that will not bear a traveller's weight, and ground that pulls at every footstep. In summer, to journey across the interior of Norway by land is slow and hard and often simply impossible, and people keep instead to the water, to the coast, to the ships. But then the winter comes, and the great cold lays its hand on all of that difficult country, and everything changes. The rivers freeze, the lakes freeze, the soft, impassable bogs freeze hard and solid, and all at once the obstacles become roads. The frozen river is a smooth, level, open highway running straight through country that could not be crossed before. The land that fought every summer traveller now lies still and white and solid and welcoming. The winter, far from sealing the household in, unrolls a whole hidden network of paths across the frozen world, and the people have the tools to travel it. They have skis, long and slender, hand-carved from resinous pine, the wood's own sap helping them slip and glide across the snow, curved gently up at the tip, fitted with leather bindings for the foot. On skis, a person moves across the deep snow not with the slow, exhausting labour of wading through it, but in long, smooth, gliding strides, swift and almost silent, covering in an easy hour a distance that would take half a hard day on foot. A single carved pole helps with balance and with rhythm. To travel by ski through this country is to move the way the snow itself seems to want a body to move. They have skates too, for the smooth swept ice of the frozen rivers and fjords, skates made from polished animal bone bound to the feet, the traveller pushing along over the ice with a pointed pole gliding across the frozen water. And for the heavy work, for carrying loads and goods, there are sledges, wooden frames set on smooth runners that slide easily where wheels would only sink and stick, drawn by horses or by oxen, the animals' hooves fitted with iron spikes for grip, hauling firewood and stores and people smoothly across the frozen ground. So the picture of the winter household changes gently as you understand this. It is not a sealed and solitary place. Out across the white frozen country, threading along the iced rivers and over the deep snow, people are moving, visiting kin, carrying goods between farms, coming together for the great winter gatherings. The smoke of one longhouse can be seen from the hill above another, and between them, on skis and skates and sledges, the winter world keeps quietly in touch with itself. The cold does not isolate, it connects, and the household by the fjord, warm in its turf-walled room, is one lit point in a wide, faintly travelled, snow-covered web of other warm and distant rooms. Let your mind go out for a while beyond the walls of the longhouse and travel the frozen country, because the winter land at night, under snow and stars, is one of the most beautiful and peaceful things this world has to offer, and you can visit it now without any cold reaching you at all. Picture the fjord first, frozen over, a long broad road of ice running between the mountains. The snow lies thin and wind-smoothed across it, and where the wind has swept the ice bare it shines, dark and faintly gleaming, under a sky crowded with more stars than you have ever counted. It is utterly still. It is utterly silent. The cold has hushed the whole world, and a person travelling here, gliding along the ice on bone skates, or moving over the snow on long pine skis, moves through a vast and perfect quiet. The only sound, the soft hiss of their own passage and their own slow breath. Picture the frozen river winding up into the interior, threading between the dark, snow-laden pines, a smooth white road where in summer there was only swift, impassable water. Picture the deep snow lying soft and unbroken over the high valleys, blue in the starlight, and the long, clean track of a single skier drawn across it, the only mark in all that whiteness. Picture, far off, the small, warm orange point of another longhouse window, another fire, another household sheltering through the same night, and the thin line of its smoke rising straight up into the still air toward the stars. And sometimes, on the clearest and coldest of these northern nights, there is the great light in the sky, the cold green and violet curtains of it, hanging and shifting and slowly folding high above the mountains, silent, vast, unhurried, pouring their soft, strange colour down over the white sleeping land. The people of this world have their own old understanding of those lights, and whatever they make of them, they have surely stood, as you might stand, simply looking up, held still by the slow beauty of it. This is the winter country, then. Not a prison and not a wasteland, but a wide, still, starlit, deeply beautiful world, hushed under its snow, threaded with quiet frozen roads, scattered with small, warm, distant fires, roofed sometimes with moving light. The household in its longhouse is one warm point within all of that vastness, and the vastness, on a still clear winter night, is not frightening at all. It is calm, it is silent, it is asleep. The whole white country, under its blanket of snow and its ceiling of stars and a traveller crossing it, or a household resting within it, is held in a stillness so complete and so gentle that it asks the mind, simply, to grow quiet and to rest. Let your mind rest, for one quiet while longer, on a single image from the frozen country, because it is a gentle one, and it holds the whole spirit of this winter world within it. Picture a traveller, alone, crossing the deep snow of a high valley on a clear cold afternoon, near the end of the brief grey daylight. They are moving on skis, long and slender, carved from pale resinous pine, and they are moving the way a person moves on skis when they have done it their whole life, without effort, without thought, in long, smooth, gliding strides, the snow hissing softly under them, their breath rising in slow, pale clouds. They are warm. They are wrapped in the layered wool, the inner garment and the heavy tunic and the wound wool at the calves and the great greased cloak over all, and the cold of the bright, still afternoon cannot reach in to trouble them. They are unhurried. There is a long way still to go, to the longhouse of the kin they are travelling to visit, but there is time, and the frozen valley is an easy road, and there is no reason in the world to hurry. And all around them is the vast white quiet of the winter land. The snow lies deep and unbroken and faintly blue in the failing light. The dark pines stand still on the slopes, each one bowed gently under its own soft load of snow. The mountains rise, white and folded, into a sky that is already in the east, deepening toward the first stars. There is no sound but the soft hiss of the skis and the traveller's own slow breath. The whole country is hushed, and still, and at peace, sleeping its long, white winter sleep. And far ahead, small and warm, the traveller can see what they are moving toward. A thin line of smoke rising straight up into the still air, and beneath it, when they come a little closer, the low green shape of a longhouse, half buried in the snow, and the faint warm orange glow of firelight at its door. A fire, a warm room, company, and food, and shelter, waiting at the end of the journey through the cold. That is the whole of this winter world, gathered into one quiet picture. The hard, beautiful country, hushed under its snow. The traveller, warm and wrapped and unhurried, moving steadily through it. And always, somewhere ahead, the smoke and the firelight, the warm room waiting, the certain shelter at the end of the cold way. Let yourself be that traveller now, in the last moments before sleep. The journey of the day is nearly done. You are warm and wrapped and unhurried. The country around you is vast and quiet and at peace. And ahead of you, close now, very close, is the warm room, the firelight, the deep and certain shelter of rest. You have only to glide the last gentle distance toward it, slow and smooth and easy, and let it take you in. Let us speak now of the dark itself. Not the cold, but the darkness, because in this northern country the darkness of winter is a presence as large and as constant as the cold, and learning to live within it is one of the deepest of all the winter's lessons. This far north, the winter does not merely bring long nights, it brings the retreat of the day almost altogether. As the season deepens, the sun climbs less and less above the line of the mountains, and the daylight shrinks to a few thin, pale hours, a brief, grey glow low in the south, the sun tracing a flat, shallow arc barely above the horizon before sliding away again. And in the far north of the country, beyond a certain line, there comes a stretch of the winter when the sun does not rise at all, when for weeks together the world holds only degrees of twilight and dark, a long blue dusk that never quite becomes day. It would be easy to think of that as something to be endured grimly, a hardship to be survived. But the people of this world do not meet the darkness that way. They meet it, instead, with rhythm and with structure, and with a deep and patient familiarity, and that is the gentler truth worth resting in tonight. They do not, for one thing, depend on the sun to tell the time. They cannot. So they have learned to read the day in other ways. They divide the daily round into parts, marked not by a sun they often cannot see, but by known points along the line of the mountains and the horizon, fixed landmarks against which the slow turning of the sky can be measured even in the dark. They keep in this way a steady inward sense of the hour, an order, a known shape to the day, that does not need the sun's permission to exist. The dark does not become formless, it keeps its measure, and the year too is given a clear and reassuring shape. The winter is not one undivided mass of darkness, but a sequence of named months, each with its own character and its own work, the slaughter month, the Yule month, and the months that follow, each one a marked stage in a journey whose end is known. To live through such a winter is not to be lost in the dark. It is to move along a familiar path, milestone by milestone, in the steady knowledge that the path leads surely back to the light. There is a kind of deep peace available in that, and it is a peace worth carrying into sleep. The dark is not endless. It only feels endless to those who have no map of it. The people of the Longhouse have the map. They know which month it is, and which will come next, and how the sequence runs, and where, far ahead, it turns at last back toward the sun. They have done this before. Their parents did it, and their parents before them. Back and back through all the generations, every one of them carried safely through the dark half of the year and delivered into the spring. The darkness, held in that long familiarity, becomes almost a kind of rest, a season for the indoor work, the slow crafts, the old told stories, the gathering close around the fire. The world outside grows quiet and still, and sleeps under its snow, and the household draws inward and slows and waits without fear, because it knows, with the certainty of a thing done 100 times, that the light is only away for a while, and that it always, always comes back. Let us sit a little longer with the darkness itself, and with the way the people of this world have made their peace with it, because there is, in that hard-won peace, something genuinely worth carrying down into your own night's sleep. The dark of this winter is long. There is no use pretending otherwise, and the people do not pretend it. For weeks together, the day is only a thin grey interruption in a season that is mostly night, and in the far north the sun withdraws altogether for a stretch, and the world holds nothing brighter than a long blue twilight. A great deal of this winter is lived by firelight, in the dim warm room, in the dark. But here is the thing the people of the Longhouse understand deep in their bones, and it changes everything. The darkness is not danger. The darkness is simply the season. It is weather. It is a thing that comes every year, on time, exactly as expected, and stays its known length, and then, exactly as expected, departs. It has done this every year of every life any of them has lived, and every year of every life their parents and grandparents lived, back and back beyond memory. The dark is not a threat that has come to the household. It is an old, known guest, and the household knows precisely how long it stays, and so the darkness, instead of being feared, is simply lived in, and even, in its way, made use of. The dark months are the indoor months, and the indoor months are the months of the slow good crafts, the spinning and the weaving and the carving and the mending. They are the months of the long-told stories, the old tales unrolled by the fire to fill the evenings, the deep store of a people's memory passed down voice to voice in the firelit dark. They are the months of being close, of the whole household gathered in one warm room, near one another, through the long nights. There is a richness to the dark season that the bright, busy summer, with all its outdoor labour, simply does not have. The winter dark draws the household in and slows it and gives it time. And underneath all of it, always, is the certainty. The light is coming back, not as a hope, not as a wish, but as a known and settled fact, as sure as anything in the world. The household can tell you, by the named months and the marked days and the points along the mountain horizon, exactly where in the long dark passage it stands, and exactly how the passage runs, and exactly where, ahead, it turns back toward the sun. To live this winter is not to be lost in an endless night. It is to walk a known road, in the dark, yes, but a road that has been walked 1,000 times and that leads without fail into the spring. There is a great peace in that, and it is a peace you can borrow tonight. The dark is not endless. Your own night is not endless. It is only a known and gentle passage, a season of rest, and it turns, surely in its own good time, back toward the light. The household sleeps through the long winter night without fear, because it knows the morning is real. Let yourself sleep the same way, and into the very deepest part of that darkness, the people of the Longhouse have set a great light. They have placed, at the heart of the hardest stretch of the winter, a festival. It is called Yule, and it is the bright still centre around which the whole of the cold season turns. Yule comes in the deep of the winter, when the household has been living within the dark for many weeks, when the stores have been steadily eaten down and the season's halfway point is near, and precisely there, at that low and weary point, the people stop their ordinary labour, and they gather, and they hold a feast. It is first of all a feast in the plainest and warmest sense. Through the autumn, in readiness, the household has brewed a strong and special ale, and now it is brought out and drunk and shared. The best of the stored food is cooked and set out. Households come together, kin and neighbours travelling in across the frozen country on their skis and their sledges, gathering under one roof, and a great chieftain's hall might fill with many guests. The long fire built up high and bright, the benches crowded, the room loud and warm with company in a way it has not been since the autumn. It is a feast of memory too. Toasts are raised and spoken, to the old gods, and to the ancestors, to the family's own dead, the people who lived in these rooms before and who kept these same fires through these same winters long ago. In the deep of the dark, the household gathers its whole long line about it, the living and the remembered together, and feels itself part of something far older and far larger than one cold season. and it is a feast of light against the dark. A great log is set to burn in the hearth, and it is tended and kept alight, a steady fire held burning through the festival, a deliberate and defiant warmth at the very turning point of the year. The people bring evergreen branches indoors, the one green living thing in a white and sleeping world, a small held promise that life has not gone, only waited. Step back from the detail of it and see what Yule truly is and why it sits exactly where it sits. It is placed, with great wisdom, at the hardest part of the winter, not at the start when spirits are still high and the stores are full, and not at the end when the light is already returning. It is placed in the long, grey middle, at the lowest point of the year, the moment when the dark feels heaviest and the spring still feels impossibly far away. And right there, at that exact low point, the people light their largest fire and pour their best ale and gather all their company close and feast. It is the winter's deep breath. It is the household and the whole community turning at the bottom of the year and saying to one another, with warmth and light and shared food, that they have come halfway, and that they have come halfway together, and that the rest of the road from here runs upward toward the returning sun. After Yule, every day is a little longer than the day before. After Yule, the light is coming back, and the feast is how the people mark that turning, and gather their strength, and carry one another, warm and fed and not alone, through into the second, brightening half of the winter. Let us linger a little longer in the warmth of the great winter feast, because there is something in it worth understanding slowly, something about why a hard-pressed people, in the deep of a difficult season, would choose to stop their work and gather and feast at all. It would be possible, after all, to imagine a people simply enduring the winter, heads down, grim, hoarding every scrap and every hour, waiting in silence for the spring. But that is not what the people of the Longhouse did. In the very middle of the dark, at the lowest and weariest point of the whole year, they chose deliberately to do the opposite. They chose to bring out the best of what they had. They chose to brew a strong and special ale through the autumn precisely so that it would be ready for this. They chose to gather, to light the great fire high, to fill the hall with company and warmth and the old toasts and the telling of tales to feast. And there is a deep wisdom in that choice. The winter could not be survived by the body alone. It also had to be survived by the spirit, and the spirit, through a long dark season, needs tending just as the body does. It needs warmth and company and light, and the felt knowledge that it is not alone. And so the people built, into the very structure of their winter, a great act of gathering and warmth and shared gladness, and they placed it with care at exactly the point where the spirit would most need it, the long grey middle where the dark feels heaviest and the spring feels furthest away. The feast was the household and the whole community, turning to one another at the bottom of the year and affirming, with fire and ale and food and the company of kin, that they were together, and that they had come this far, and that the rest of the road led upward into the light. It gathered their strength. It renewed their spirits. It reminded every person in the crowded warm hall that they belonged to something larger and older and stronger than one cold and tired self, a household, a kindred, a long line of people stretching back and forward through many winters, all of them carried through, all of them bound together. And then, strengthened by it, the people returned to the slow, ordinary days, to the spinning and the fire tending and the patient living through, and they carried on through the second half of the winter toward the spring. The feast did not shorten the dark, but it lit it. It placed a great warmth and a great gladness at the very heart of the hardest season, and it carried the people, in spirit as well as in body, all the way to the other side. There is one more part of this winter to speak of honestly, before we let the night carry us fully into sleep, and it is a gentler subject than it might at first sound. It is the matter of staying well, and of being cared for, through the long months of the closed and crowded house. The Longhouse, for all its warmth, asks something of the bodies that live in it. The same thick turf walls that hold the heat also hold the smoke, and the air, and the close shared life of many people and many animals together in one room for half a year. It is a winter spent indoors, in company, in the haze of the hearth. And so the winter brings, as it always has, its share of coughs and chest troubles, and the ordinary illnesses of the cold confined season. But the people of this world are not without an answer to that. Every Longhouse holds, alongside its store of food, a quieter store, a winter store of healing. And the keepers of that store, the healers of this world, are most often its women. Women who carry a real and practical knowledge of the body and its troubles, gathered and tested and passed down across many generations. Through the green months, when the land is full and growing, these healers gather what the winter will need. They go out and collect the wild herbs and roots and barks whose virtues they know, and they dry them, and they put them carefully by, so that in the depth of winter, when nothing grows, the means of care are still there, waiting on the shelf. And the care they give is real. There is yarrow for the cleaning and the closing of wounds. There is angelica, made into a warm infusion for the troubles of the chest and the stomach. There is juniper, burned to cleanse and sweeten the close indoor air, or used to wash a hurt. There is horehound, boiled and sweetened with honey, into a soothing syrup for a winter cough. And there is honey itself spread upon a wound as a dressing. Honey that has within it, though they know it only by long observation and not by name, a quiet power to keep a hurt clean and to help it heal. Picture that, then, as one more of the winter's quiet provisions. In the warm, dim longhouse through the cold months when someone is unwell, there is someone else who knows what to do. There is a wise and practised hand to mix the warm infusion, to prepare the poultice, to sweeten the cough syrup with honey, to sit with the sick one through the worst of a fever night. The knowledge is there, the dried herbs are there, gathered in the kinder season and saved against this one. The care is there, and that may be the truest comfort of this whole winter world, the one to carry with you down into sleep. No one in the longhouse faces the winter alone. The cold is met by many hands together. If one person falls ill, others know how to tend them. If one task is hard, others take it up. The food was gathered by all of them. The wood was cut by all of them. The wool is spun by all of them. The long dark is waited out by all of them, side by side in the same warm room. The winter is hard, but it is shared completely, and a hardship shared among many warm and willing hands becomes something a household can carry, and carry calmly, all the way through to the spring. Stay a moment longer with the healers of this world, and with the deep comfort of being cared for because of all the things that carried a household through the winter. This may be the gentlest and the most important. The knowledge these healers held was not written down. It lived in them and in their memory, and it had been placed there slowly across a whole life of learning by the healers who came before. A young woman learning the craft would have walked the summer hills beside an older one year after year, being shown which plant was which, where it grew, when to gather it, how to dry it, what it was good for, how much to use. She would have stood beside her through the tending of the sick, through the setting of bones and the dressing of wounds and the long watching of fever nights, learning by seeing, by helping, by being trusted with a little more each year. And in time the knowledge would be wholly hers, and in her turn she would pass it, the same slow way, to the one who came after her. So the healing kept in the longhouse was not a thin or a fragile thing. It was the gathered and tested wisdom of many generations, carried forward in living memory, proven over and over against the real troubles of real winters. The warm infusion that eased the cough, the poultice that closed the wound, the herb that calmed the griping stomach, the honey that kept the hurt clean, all of it was known to work because it had been watched, patiently, working, for longer than anyone could remember. And so, in the longhouse, when the winter brought its illnesses, as every winter did, no one faced them alone and no one faced them helpless. There was someone who knew. There was a calm and practised hand to mix what needed mixing, to prepare what needed preparing, to sit by the bedside through the hard hours of the night, to do the small steady things that ease a body and let it heal. The dried herbs were on the shelf, gathered in the green months against this very need. The knowledge was in the room, the care was certain. Let that be one of the warm certainties you carry down into sleep tonight. To be in that longhouse through that winter was to be held within a web of care. If you were well, you worked, and your work helped to keep the others. If you fell ill, others worked, and their care helped to keep you. The strength of the household was not in any single person, but in all of them together, in the way they covered for one another, tended one another, carried one another's weight when it needed carrying. The winter was hard, but no one met it alone, and a hard thing met together, by many willing hands, is a thing that can be borne, and borne calmly, all the way through to the returning light. Let us now do the thing this whole night has been moving toward. Let us simply live one ordinary day of this winter, slowly from its dark beginning to its dark end, and let the gentle shape of it carry you the rest of the way down into sleep. The day begins in darkness, because in this season every day begins in darkness. There is no bright dawn to wake to. There is only a slow, faint, reluctant greying somewhere far off behind the mountains, hours from now, and long before that the household begins to stir. The first thing, always, is the fire. Through the night the hearth has been banked, the embers kept covered and alive beneath a soft grey blanket of ash, sleeping, but not dead. And the first task of the day, often the task of whoever wakes first, is to kneel beside it and wake it gently, to clear the ash and find the living warmth still glowing within, and feed it small dry kindling, and breathe on it softly and patiently until the glow becomes a flame, and the flame finds the new wood, and the hearth comes awake again and begins once more to push its warmth out into the cold room. The fire is the first thing woken and the last thing settled, every single day, and the whole household's comfort turns upon that small faithful act. Then, the animals. At the dark end of the house, behind the partition, the herd has been stirring and they must be tended. They are given their measured ration of hay, that carefully counted winter fodder, perhaps a warm mash of grain or seaweed. The cows are milked, the milk carried back warm to the living half of the house. The stalls are seen to. It is close, patient, bodily work, done in the dim light and the animal warmth, and it is done every morning of the winter without exception, because the herd that keeps the household alive must itself be kept. Then, the food. The morning meal is simple and warm and steady. Most likely the porridge, the thick grain pottage simmered slow over the freshened fire. Perhaps with milk, perhaps with a little of something saved and good stirred through it. It is eaten on the benches, close to the hearth, in the brown dim light, an unhurried warm beginning to the day, the body fueled for the cold hours, and then the long middle of the day, the working heart of it, and the work is the quiet indoor work of winter. The wool, above all. The combing and the spinning and the weaving, the spindle turning and turning, the loom weights knocking softly, the cloth growing slowly down the frame, the mending of tools and gear by the firelight with patient hands, the carving, the grinding of grain between the stones for tomorrow's bread and porridge, the cooking of the main meal, the big iron cauldron set over the fire to simmer the long, slow winter broth. It is calm work. That is the thing to feel about it. It is not frantic and it is not driven. It is the slow, repeating, companionable labour of people who have all winter to do it in, who know their tasks the way they know their own hands, and who do them at the unhurried pace the season allows. There is talk over the work. There are the old stories told and told again to fill the hours. There are children underfoot learning the tasks by watching and by small helping. The day moves at the pace of the spindle and the simmering pot, and nobody is hurrying it because there is nowhere else for any of them to be. The thin grey daylight, such as it is, comes and goes almost unnoticed, a brief paleness at the smoke vents and the door, and then it withdraws again, and the long blue dusk returns, and the room is once more a place of firelight and shadow. The evening meal is the gathering of the day. The broth that has simmered all the afternoon, the bread, the ale, set out and shared on the benches around the hearth, the whole household drawn in close to the light and the warmth as the dark deepens fully outside. And after the meal, the evening, which is the gentlest time of all, the work grows lighter or stops, the talk grows slower. Someone tells a long tale, the kind everyone has heard before and wants to hear again, and the voices murmur low, and the fire settles, and the children grow heavy-eyed. And one by one the household makes ready for sleep. The benches are spread with the sheepskins and the thick woolen blankets. The fire is banked for the night, the embers covered carefully under their ash, set to sleep alongside the people, ready to be woken again at the dark beginning of the next day. The animals are quiet behind their wall. The house grows still, and that is the day. That is a whole day of this winter, lived from its dark start to its dark close. Notice that nothing in it was sharp. Notice that the whole of it moved slowly, in a circle, fire and herd and food and quiet work and food, again and rest, the same gentle round that was walked yesterday, and will be walked again tomorrow, the calm turning wheel of the winter household. There is nothing in that day to fear, and nothing in it to hurry. It is only a slow, warm circle, turning in the dark by the fire. Let us walk through one more part of the winter day, slowly, the part that is gentlest of all, the long evening, because the evening of the longhouse is made almost perfectly for the letting go of the day and the coming on of sleep. The main meal is finished. The cauldron has been lifted from its chain or set aside, the long-simmered broth eaten, the bread and the ale shared out around the benches, and the household is full and warm and beginning altogether to slow down. The fire is built up a little for the evening, a little brighter now than its low-working flame, and its light fills the room with that soft-moving amber and throws the long soft shadows of the people up the turf walls and gathers everyone without anyone deciding it into a loose close ring within its glow. The work grows lighter, perhaps a little spinning still, because the hands of this world are rarely entirely still, the spindle turning slow and easy in someone's fingers, almost without thought. Perhaps a small carving, a tool being shaped, a repair being gently finished. But the driving work of the day is done, and the evening's doing is soft and unhurried and half-rest already. And then the stories. This is the heart of the longhouse evening. The old tales told by the fire. There is always someone who tells them, and the household gathers to listen, the children leaning in, the elders nodding along to the familiar turns, and the voice goes on, low and steady, unrolling the long shape of some tale that everyone has heard before and wants to hear again. Tales of gods and of journeys, of heroes and of far places, of the people who lived before. The particular tale matters less than the telling of it. The warm low voice filling the dim room, the fire crackling under the words, the snow silent beyond the walls, the whole household held together inside the one slow, unwinding story. And as the evening deepens, the talk grows slower, and the pauses grow longer, and the fire begins to be let down toward its embers. The children grow heavy-eyed and are settled into the sheepskins. One by one the household makes its bed along the warm benches, drawing the thick woolen blankets close. The voices drop to a murmur, and then to nothing. The fire is banked carefully for the night, the embers tucked safe under their soft ash, and the longhouse, full and warm and fed and told its story, sinks down gently into the dark and sleeps. That is the evening, every evening, all winter long. The slow, good food, the gathered firelight, the easy half-work of the patient hands, the long, low-told tale, the children settled, the voices fading, the fire banked, the quiet coming down. It is a shape made for rest. It is a day curving down, gently and surely into sleep, the same way your own day is curving down now, gently and surely, toward the very same place. And now it is night again in the longhouse, the deep middle of a winter night, and everyone has gone to their rest, and so let us too simply rest here and feel the full quiet of it settle in. The fire is low. It is banked down to its embers, a long, soft line of dim red warmth down the centre of the room, breathing out its gentle heat into the dark, asking nothing, only glowing, faithfully, through the hours until morning. Its light is the softest light there is, a low red glow that does not so much illuminate the room as warm it, that touches the underside of the rafters and the curve of the turf wall with the faintest amber, and leaves everything else to the kind and complete darkness. The walls hold. All around, the thick turf walls and the thick turf roof hold the night out and the warmth in, as they have done all winter, as they will do until spring, that patient borrowed steadiness of the earth itself wrapped around the sleeping house. Beyond them the cold and the snow and the wide white country, and they cannot reach in. Inside, only the held warmth and the dark and the rest. The animals are quiet at the end of the house. Now and then faintly the slow shift of a hoof, the long breath of a cow, the small private sound of a large warm body settling deeper into sleep, steady, unhurried, peaceful sounds, the herd resting behind its wall, breathing its warmth into the night, sleeping as the household sleeps, all of them folded together into the same quiet, and the people rest along the benches, wrapped in their wool and their sheepskins, lifted up above the cold floor air into the warm, still seam of the room, close to the dim red line of the fire. The day's slow circle is finished. Tomorrow it will turn again, the fire woken, the herd tended, the quiet work taken up. But that is tomorrow, and it asks nothing of anyone tonight. Tonight there is only this, the low red embers, the thick holding walls, the breathing of the animals, the deep complete sheltered stillness of a winter house in the small hours, with everyone in it safe and warm and asleep. There is nothing to do now, there is nowhere to be. The winter is being lived exactly as it should be lived, one slow day at a time, and tonight's part of it is only this part, the resting part, the part where the whole warm house lets go of the day and sinks down into the dark and sleeps, and the winter, lived this way, one calm, slow circling day after another, does pass. It always passes. That is the last and the deepest of its quiet truths, and it is the one to fall asleep holding. Imagine, then, the far side of it. Imagine that many of these days have turned, that the great festival in the deep of the dark has come and gone, that the household has lived along through the second, brightening half of the season. And imagine that you are standing once more on that low hill above the fjord where this whole journey began, in the thin light of a late afternoon. And something has changed. It is small at first, almost too small to be sure of, but the light has lasted longer today than it did a month ago. The grey afternoon is holding on just a little, reluctant now to give way to the dark. The sun, when it showed, climbed a hand's breadth higher above the line of the mountains than it used to. The dark is still long, and the snow still lies deep and white over all the country, and the cold is still real. But the balance has tipped. The light is winning now, every day a little more of it. Every day the dark giving a little ground, and down in the valleys, if you stand very still and listen, there is the faint far sound of water, the smallest sound. Somewhere under the snow, in the warmth of the lengthening days, the ice has begun, just barely, to loosen. A trickle, a drip. The first thin thread of the thaw, the first quiet promise that the rivers will run again, and the grass will rise again, and the long white sleep of the land will end. This is the moment the whole winter was walked toward. And see now what it took to reach it. It took the thick turf walls, holding the cold out month after month. It took the fire, woken faithfully every dark morning and banked safe every night. It took the herd brought in and the herd carefully counted so the hay would last. It took the harvest dried and soured and smoked and stored so the food would last. It took the wool spun and woven through all the long evenings so the bodies stayed warm. It took the skis on the frozen rivers, keeping the scattered households joined. It took the great feast set down in the deepest dark to gather everyone's strength and carry them over the low point of the year. It took the gathered herbs and the healing hands and the old knowledge and the patience and the slow calm circling days, and above all it took the household itself, all of it, every pair of hands doing the quiet work together. None of it was hurried. None of it was done in fear. It was done the way the snow falls steadily, one flake and one task and one slow day at a time, by people who had done it before and knew, with a deep and unshakable certainty, that the spring was real and that the spring was coming, and that this path walked patiently led there. And it did lead there. Here is the proof, in the lengthening light and the first faint sound of running water. The winter was met and lived and carried, and now gently it is ending. The light is coming back. It always comes back. Stay a little longer on the hill above the fjord in the lengthening light of the winter's far side, and let the slow fact of the turning year settle all the way through you, because it is the deepest comfort this whole journey has to give. Everything below you is still held in winter. The fjord is still frozen, a long pale road between the mountains. The snow still lies deep over all the country, soft and blue in the failing light. The longhouse is still half buried in it, the smoke still rising thin and steady from its roof. To a glancing eye, nothing has changed at all. But you have been here long enough now to see what a glancing eye would miss. The light has lasted longer today. The sun stood higher. The afternoon is holding on, and under the snow, faint and far, there is the first thread of running water. The winter is still here, but it is a winter that has turned, a winter on its long, slow way out, and every single day from here will carry a little more light than the day before, steadily, without fail, all the way to the spring. And think now of the household down in that longhouse, living through these very days. They have come the whole long way. They woke the fire every dark morning and banked it safe every night through all the months. They tended the herd and the hay lasted because the autumn count was honest. They ate from the stores, and the stores held because the harvest was well gathered and well kept. They spun and wove through all the dark evenings, and so they stayed warm. They kept their feast in the deepest dark and were carried over the low turn of the year. They cared for one another through the coughs and the chills of the close season, and now here they are on the far side of it, and the light is coming back, and they have done it. They have brought themselves, and their children, and their animals through the whole of the winter, and into the lengthening days. They did it the way it has always been done, slowly, patiently, one fire, one meal, one quiet, circling day at a time, without panic and without haste, because panic and haste have no use in a winter, which cannot be hurried and can only be lived. They did it together, every pair of hands in the household sharing every part of the load. And they did it carried by the oldest certainty their people had, the certainty you can feel now standing on this hill in the lengthening light, the simple, unshakable knowledge that the dark is only a season, and that the season turns, and that the light always comes back. That is what it took to survive a winter in this place, in this year. It took warmth, and food, and work, and knowledge, and patience, and one another. And it took the deep, quiet faith, proven true every single year, that the spring was real and was coming. Let that be the thing you carry down into your own sleep now. Whatever your own winter, whatever the dark you are passing through, it is a season, and it turns, and the light is already, somewhere, on its slow, sure way back to you. And so let the whole of it settle now, and soften, and begin to fade, as you drift the last gentle distance down into sleep. You have travelled a long way tonight. You stood on a hill above a frozen fjord and watched the first snowfall. You walked down a worn path and bent through a low door into the warm dark of a turf-walled house. You sat by a long fire that has been tended faithfully for 1,000 years. You felt the thick earthen walls holding the winter out, and heard the slow breathing of the animals sharing their warmth through the wooden wall, and saw the stores of food hung safe in the rafters and packed in the wooden vats. You wrapped yourself in the layered wool and felt how completely it held you. You crossed the frozen starlit country on long pine skis. You lived through the long dark and learned that it was only a season, and you gathered at the great fire of the midwinter feast, and you walked, one slow circling day at a time, all the way to the far side of the winter, where the light was already coming back. You do not need to keep any of it. Let it all go now, gently, the way the household let go of each day, the way the fire was banked down softly into its embers each night. The longhouse can fade, the fjord can fade, the mountains and the snow and the long warm room can all grow dim and distant and drift away, their work done, having carried your mind kindly along while your body sank toward rest. What remains is only this. You are warm, you are wrapped and held as the household was held in its turf-walled room. The dark around you is a kind and sheltering dark. The day is finished well, and set down, and there is nothing left for you to do, nothing to carry, nowhere to be. Your body is heavy and still. Your breathing is slow and easy and faithful. The bed holds all of your weight, completely, the way the deep earth holds a stone. And far off, beyond the edge of everything, the light is already slowly on its way back. It always is. The winter turns, the dark is only a season, the morning is real, and it is coming, and it asks nothing of you now. So rest. Let the last words become only a soft warmth somewhere in the dark heard without listening, and let them go too. Let your mind drift wherever it drifts. Let the quiet take you all the way down, deep and warm and complete. You are safe. You are held. You are warm. Sleep now. Sleep well. And the light will be there, waiting, when you wake. So let the warmth of that settle over you now, fully, as we let the night take you the rest of the way. You do not have to hold on to any of it. Not the longhouse, not the fire, not the turf walls or the quiet turning days. They were only a soft place for your mind to rest while your body grew heavy and slow, and ready for sleep. Let them all begin to drift now, gently, the way the snow drifts down out of a pewter sky, unhurried, soft, asking nothing of you at all. Let yourself feel, instead, just the simple warmth of where you are. You are wrapped and held exactly as the household was wrapped and held in its turf-walled room. The dark around you is a kind dark, a sheltering dark, the same kind dark that filled the longhouse in the deep of the night. There is nothing you need to do. There is nowhere you need to be. The day is finished and finished well, and you have set it down, and now there is only the rest. Breathe slowly and easily, and feel how your body is already sinking, growing heavier, settling deeper into the warmth, the way the whole longhouse settled down into the dark each night and slept. Your shoulders are heavy, your hands are still, your breathing has found its own slow, quiet pace, faithful, unhurried, doing its gentle work without your help. The fire is low, the walls are holding, the long white country sleeps under its snow, and somewhere far off the light is already, slowly beginning to return, the way it always returns, the way it always will. And none of that needs your attention now. The winter knows how to carry itself. The night knows how to carry you. So let go. Let the last of the words become only a soft warmth in the dark, something heard without listening, whether in the background of a deep and gathering sleep. Let your mind drift wherever it drifts. Let the quiet have you completely. You are warm. You are safe. You are held. And there is nothing left to do tonight but sleep. Rest now. Sleep well. The light always comes back. If this long quiet journey through the Viking winter helped carry you towards sleep, you are welcome to follow this channel, where there will always be another slow and gentle night like this one waiting for you. Sleep deeply, be well, and we will walk together, slowly, through another world the next time you need to rest.